Good morning, class. As we have gone through this course, one of the things that has made me think the most are the lectures by Dr. Livingston. It is clear through his lectures and his writings, and by the organizations that he supports, that he is a proponent of small government. Not only small government, but that he would possibly even support the idea of the United States breaking up into smaller states in order to better manage the people and the territory. Now, in all likelihood, this will never happen, but it is interesting to imagine what it would be like if it did. In order to look at this question in something more than a fantasy what if type of scenario, I'm going to use World War II as an example to show how a large, unified democracy was able to apply its power in ways that were beneficial to the world and all of humanity, where a loose federation of independent states may have been much less effective. I understand that not everyone, not even me, always appreciates how large and bureaucratic our nation has become. It is even questionable how well that it is able to represent the people, how well it is able to represent the people, since it seems like special interest groups and large corporations often benefit the most from um, benefit in an unproportional sense from government policy. Um, But consider the worldwide state of affairs in 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. Nazi forces virtually steamrolled the Polish army. Then, just a few months later, they crushed the French and sent the Russians reeling all across the East. And in such a short time, the Western world was completely upended, and the very idea of freedom and democracy was in legitimate jeopardy. Um, America tried to remain neutral, but in the end we were unable to. The attack on Pearl Harbor in the Pacific and the destruction of our Western allies in Europe inevitably pulled the United States into the war. Now, while it is true that the British and the Russians were able to sap Nazi strength and stall Hitler's advances, in all likelihood the British and the Russians would have ended up having to sign some kind of a truce that would most likely have left most of mainland Europe in German hands. Um, my question here is, would a loose federation of independent American states, or even worse, a large dysfunctional and antagonistic group of American states, would they have been able to coordinate operations and resources well enough and efficiently enough to stop the Japanese and the Nazis? In a book called The Second World War, A Short History by R.A.C. Parker, we learn that by the end of the war, the United States alone, this is not to mention the Soviet Union or Russia, was outproducing Germany in men and equipment by massive amounts. And I mentioned Russia because Russia was another large centralized federation that was able to bring massive resources to bear. But getting back to the United States, we were producing uh, 2 times the number of aircraft, over 5 times as many trucks and vehicles, 3 times the number of warships, and probably about the same number of tanks as Germany. And on top of that, we were able to ultimately field almost 2 million more soldiers than Germany was able to field throughout the entirety of the war. Now, of course, there's no way of knowing for sure, but what if the United States in 1941, when it entered, what if the United States was not the United States back in 1941 when it entered the war? What if it was 4 or more separate republics, as Dr. Livingston suggests might have been a better way to go? Would all of these republics have been able to agree upon entering the war? Or would one or two of them supported the European cause? Or worse, would none of them have supported it, have had supported it? Would they have all decided to stay home? If only some of them had decided to help to defeat the Nazis, would that have been enough? Of course, we'll never know, but what we know for sure is that the massive resources of the United States in men and equipment, combined with the centralized government needed to bring them to bear, was instrumental in defeating a barbaric regime that threatened the very fabric of Western culture. Um, I think the sheer size and power of the United States has also played a large role in keeping other powers in check. At other times, consider the Cold War as a great example. The United States' ability to match and exceed the USSR's military capabilities was it was key to us winning the Cold War. And even today, the fact that the United States is easily capable of outstripping the Russians and the Chinese in military spending makes a big difference. According to the CIA fact book, the United States defense budget is almost 10 times that of Russia and 5 times that of China. So while there may be arguments for small republics, I believe that in an age where there are large authoritarian states that are hostile to Western values, it seems to me that it may be good to have a large, even if somewhat unwieldy and inefficient, democratic superpower like the United States is good both for the American people and the world. So, as you can see, I'm not necessarily a proponent of small republics, at least not where America is concerned. Thanks for listening, and obviously, if you have any questions, please post. Have a great evening.